Welcome everyone to Talent Intelligence, Key to the Future of Work. So we're so happy you're all here and joining us for today's webinar. So without, of course, further ado, I would like to introduce to you to ECCI's Regional Director to just give us an overview of what we are looking at on this conversation for today. So today we have Karthik Subbaraman of the ECCI International. Karthik, take the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Magandang umaga. I hope you can hear me okay. Yes, 2 years into the pandemic, I'm still getting used to Zoom. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking time to join this session today with us. My name is Karthik. I handle the regional operations for ECCI and Apex. Very happy to see familiar faces or names, I must say, in the list of participants. Thank you all for taking time to join the session. I'm going to keep my part very brief. That's the good news, and we're going to have our colleagues from Accendo share some exciting insights that we have for talent management practitioners in the country. I'll take a couple of minutes to set context and then get into the session proper, right? So for those of you who's not familiar, perhaps, give this as an initial background. For those of you who know us well, perhaps it gives you an insight on why this session and why us and Accendo, right? So as ECCI, we've been in the Philippines for 2 decades now. We are in a business of helping organizations achieve performance excellence. And we believe performance is a function of people and process in an organization. And our interventions are always focused on improving these two aspects, right? So on the process front, as you might know and have experience, we do a lot of consulting, helping set up processes, establish management systems, and therefore provide a foundation from where organizations can improve performance. On the other hand, we cater to the people front largely through upskilling and related interventions, basically. So the pandemic, like in any other situation or any of your own personal as well as professional lives, has sort of forced us to pivot. Many times I look at it and think of it as in a good way, and we are at this point where the digital transformation, a word that's probably been used the most over the last 2 years in the corporate circles, a necessary reality, right? An imperative, so to speak. But it's not the same for every organization out there. What might mean, what digital transformation might mean for me and my organization is probably going to be very different from what it means for somebody else. So we've kept tabs with it. We have constantly tried to be in the right side when organizations come to us for inputs and sort of insights, and more importantly solutions out there for them to be able to do it the right way. And that's how our technology solutions part of our portfolio basically came to the fore. And over the last 18 months, as some of you might know, we have actively pursued or sort of helped organizations digitize their learning initiatives, automate some of their learning management functions in a seamless fashion, so learning does not fall behind, and therefore talent also still remains key for businesses to succeed, especially in the days to come. Now, having said that, we've extended that sort of trajectory to look at not just talent development from a learning standpoint, but also understanding how businesses can benefit from having an intelligence into how businesses are on one hand reliant on talent, and on the other hand how they can align the business strategy, or the talent strategy rather, with the business strategy. It's easier said than done. I think there have been enough studies done by the right organizations around the world, where we realized that companies generally find it difficult to ensure that these two are aligned, although they know what is best for their organizations. Now, it's not just a function of deciding to do it, it's also having the right tools as well as capabilities on hand to be able to proceed in that direction. And that's when we sort of came across what Accendo does, and we thought it makes perfect sense for our companies in the Philippines to learn from what is being done in the nearshore markets, our neighbors, and how we can also benefit from the same in setting up or having a clear line of sight into our talent management process, and therefore gaining talent intelligence, basically. So that's where this session is coming from. This collaboration with Accendo is coming from. With that said, I'd like to get into the session proper by introducing our friend from Accendo, Sharma Lachu. He's based in Malaysia, originally from there as well, but spent a lot of time in Australia studying and then working in talent management and talent consulting. He's the cheerleader of a very active professional group that strives to provide the right ecosystem for talent to flourish, irrespective of their position or organization. And that's the fundamental reason why the business exists, and the solutions that they strive to catapults, basically. So I'd like none other than him to sort of provide a big picture of what the space is all about, where we are heading when it comes to helping organizations or having organizations be in the right place to optimize their talent. So I'd like to pass on the floor to Sharma to give us an idea, and also from there on to drive us through the session proper after. Yeah. Thank you, and I sincerely appreciate seeing you all here again. And over to you, Sharma.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Karthik. Thank you very much, everyone. I see 27 people in the panelists group. Thank you all very much for making time to join us today. I won't take too much time. Allow me to walk you all through some of the philosophy of Accendo, how we came to being, and what are we trying to solve, and what our vision and our manifesto is in this journey. And I'll pass it on to Damiri to drive you all through the journey of Talent Pulse. So, let me talk about this as a very personal story. I often refer to myself as a failed sports enthusiast. I love my sports. I play a lot of football. I cycle all the time. Swim. Give me any sports and I'll play it. But I never became professional in any one of them. But I got the opportunity to get quite serious in a few of these sports, and learning from this journey in the sports arena. I've often believed that the idea of peak performance comes, or idea of peak performance in an organization comes from sports, right? The idea of athletes being able to day in, day out, perform at their highest level. And us in the corporate world looking at that, wanting that for our people. But the one thing we never brought in is the ecosystem that helps support the athletes. So I often look at the corporate world and talk about staff and people that work in organizations as corporate athletes. And the way we now help identify how we drive this journey forward in order to achieve peak performance is what Accendo tries to do. At the very core of Accendo, all we try and do is a very simple premise, right? The reason Accendo is in being is to be able to provide everyone with the opportunity to be the best versions of themselves at work. Why? Because we work more than we do anything else in the world today, right? Like if you just do a very quick calculation of how many hours you spend a week working against how many hours you spend with your family, how many hours you sleep, you will find very, very quickly you work more than you do anything else. If you don't, you're in a very privileged position, I guarantee you. So if work is what we do most of the time, then we need to be able to try and make sure that the work we are doing is aligned best to how we are as an individual, how we are able to perform, the ecosystem around us are all catered to be able to support us very, very well. So there is a term I often use called the invisible leakage. The invisible leakage is the delta between where one needs to be when they take on a job against where most people are because of multitude of reasons, right? Whether it be the subconscious bias of managers making decisions, whether it just be the lack of data to be able to make smart decisions, or just the lack of talent in the marketplace. And that gap of where you need to be and where typically people are creates the delta between inefficiencies in an organization. So as Accendo drives for this purpose, all we are trying to do is reduce this gap as quickly as possible to be able now to achieve that peak performance altitude, right? So the way I look at this as a holistic manner is exactly like how a patient walks into a hospital. When I walk into a hospital and I say, look, I've got some sort of a problem, or, I've got some pain somewhere, the very first thing they do is very robust, if it's a good hospital, a very good, robust diagnostics journey, right? They make sure they do the right tests. They make sure they've got all kinds of data on me. They go through my history. All this diagnostics is collected about me as a patient. Once that diagnostics is collected, they overlay that diagnostics on top of benchmarks that they've already had, right? So for a doctor to come and tell me, Sharma, your blood pressure is high, your cholesterol is high, there's a data set that's already available for them to be able to benchmark that journey. And then using that two data sets together, they're now able to prescribe solutions for me, be it short-term, medium-term, long-term. Think about everything Accendo is trying to do in that exact same manner. In this whole idea of the corporate journey, we want to be able to diagnose individuals first, be able to understand them holistically, not just through psychometric assessments, but holistically. Once we understand them holistically, how do we benchmark them against what good is supposed to look like within an organization, externally, whatever the journey is, right? And then be able to prescribe the journey of learning new skills, acquiring all these nudges that happen through their life to be able to get them to that optimal level as quickly as possible. And so that is essentially what Accendo does. And that is where Accendo play in this whole ecosystem. That's why, partnering with somebody like ECCI and Apex makes absolute sense. Because, with all the learning journeys and interventions that they do, it just makes the plugging in of Talent Pulse a lot more robust for all the clients that they're working with. So as we go through this process, and my colleague Damiri will be sharing with you Talent Pulse as a whole, allow me just to very quickly walk you through the premise of what you would be seeing in a bit, right? So the core of everything we do. So there is a line I was introduced to back in 2015, 2016, right? Skills as the currency of the future, right? And with jobs so quickly evolving, the only thing that's going to stay relevant is skills. And skills even, I think the World Economic Forum had identified that the half-life of skills today is only 5 years, which means a skill that you've learned 10 years ago is obsolete now almost, except for Microsoft Excel, of course. Right? So as you start evolving your skills, you're constantly going to need to update that capability. And as jobs evolve, your skill core is going to be what's going to determine how much evolution or revolution is required in your journey, right? So whether you're looking at it from a recruitment perspective, from a succession management, hypo identification, or even, the more developed, more mature clients that we're speaking to are now talking about talent mobility and self-service career pathing. These are components where they allow their employees to drive their own career, and for them to be, the organizations to be facilitators of this journey. And no matter how you run this process, the ability of managing this journey is always going to be within the Talent Pulse modules, right? So as you look at Talent Pulse, think about it from three very, very simple perspectives, exactly like this hospital journey that I was talking to you about. The ability to diagnose individuals and then be able to curate what good is supposed to look like, and then be able to move them and prescribe the nudges required for the future. Right. Now, as I pass the floor to Damiri, allow me to share with you a story I often like to share with panelists, right? This is absolutely nothing to do with HR, and just allow my imagination to stretch as I ask you to allow your imagination to stretch, right? I love reading about space, and one of my favorite orators is a gentleman called Neil deGrasse Tyson. If you've never heard of him, please just go on to YouTube after this, not after this, but after the session, go on to YouTube, just type Neil deGrasse Tyson and just listen to him speak about space. It is addictive, I guarantee you. In one of his books, he speaks, or he shares a story, which I feel is very, very critical to the way we think about this journey, right? So the story goes, and I'm paraphrasing, but the story goes, Columbus, when he was sorry, excuse me, when he was sailing the seas, got lost eventually. There seems to be a precedent with Columbus getting lost, right? So he gets lost in some island, and he docks in that island, and he's running out of food. So he goes to the islanders and he says to the islanders, look, I'm running out of food. Can you please give me some food? The islanders say, sorry, we only have enough food for ourselves. Can't share with you. Now, Columbus is somebody who sails. He knows the stars, he knows the skies. So he knows that there was an eclipse about to come, right? So he tells the islanders, if you don't give me your food, I will ask my God to take your moonlight away. Right? Islanders go, funny guy, sure, but we don't believe you. Suddenly, after a few days, the moonlight starts disappearing because the eclipse is happening, right? And they panic, and they come out, they rush, and they give him all the food they have, and he takes all the food, and he says, thank you very much. My God is very kind. I will now ask my God to give you back your moonlight, right? And as the eclipse passes, the moonlight shines again, and everyone is so happy that his God has given them back the moonlight. I see this story, and I relate that to a lot of things we do in HR, right? The kings and the generals of the world, even till today, constantly look up to the astrophysicists or the astronomers of the world to help them guide through the skies of the night and the stars. Why? Because when you control the sea, you control the land a lot easier, right? As HR professionals, I genuinely see ourselves as the consorts to the kings and the generals of the world. We are the astrophysicists of the organization. The stars in the sky are the people we help manage, and the better we are at doing it, the sharper we are in our advice to the kings and generals of the world. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to pass the floor back to Damiri, and I hope you enjoy the next 30 minutes of Talent Pulse. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sharma, as always with your storytelling. Accendo, we hear lots of Sharma stories and analogies, and always appreciate that. So yeah, allow me to share my screen then. I'll also just turn off my video because sometimes internet is not your best friend. So let's do this. Okay. Can you all see the screen? Somebody in the panelists, can we see the screen?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right, so this is Talent Pulse. We call it our talent intelligence platform. Essentially, the idea, exactly what Sharma was saying, of enabling our clients to just be those guidance, right, to the business for HR to essentially have that control, have the ability to take back talent management end to end, really focusing on how do we best serve the organization, how do we best come up with the best solutions for our employees, finding those right talents and making those right decisions, right? Essentially those 3 steps that Sharma shared. So what I'll show with you in a very high level point of view are the things that within Talent Pulse that builds towards that. So understanding your candidates, understanding what good looks like. I'll share our approach to that as well. And then I'll also show you the so what, right? So, one of the things that we realize with a lot of clients, clients who are doing a number of assessments, have been doing assessments for a number of years, clients who have, 1,001 different job descriptions. And essentially what it basically means is that they have data everywhere, whether it's in silo, whether it's in different systems, or whether they are talking to each other or not. Essentially, there's just data everywhere. And how do we actually help our clients capture all of that and make sense out of all of that? And this is where our approach comes into play. And I do want to then show you eventually the so what. Once we've cleaned up the data, once we've gathered all the information that we need, all the insights that we have, what do we do next? How does this actually help the talents? How does this actually help the business? So let me get straight into it. So if you think about what talent management is, and this is something which I share with my team all the time, something I share with my clients all the time, talent management essentially is basically a form of data analysis, right? You're making decisions based on data. And essentially there are 2 key data when it comes to make a good talent management decision. Number 1 is data about your employees, about the talents. So this is where Sharma was talking about the diagnostic aspect. I really need to know my employees. I really need to understand what drives them, what motivates them, what makes them tick. And the second key data is then, what does good look like? Essentially, what are the roles do we have in the organization? How do the roles in our organization drives towards the strategy, drive towards the success of our organization? And what does it take to be good in those roles? Right, so essentially that's the second data point. And so the so what, when we put the 2 and 2 together, when we put the talent data together, when we put the job data together, that is where you're able to see and make all the right talent management decisions. So allow me first to show you the first 2 steps of how do we capture that. So the first step is understanding our talents. So on Talent Pulse, we have what we call a closed marketplace approach. Essentially what this means is that, as we all know, that assessment marketplace out there is completely saturated. There are 1,001 different tools out there that say they have the best leadership assessments. There are 1,001 different tools out there that say they have the best technical assessment tool. And as a user of assessments, so yourselves as a user of assessments, you get bombarded with all of these information. You get bombarded with all these different vendors coming to you with the best assessment tools. What we want to do is actually eliminate that buying decision for you. So we have already, our team over the number of years Accendo has been around, have already gone out there and identified the best assessment tools out there, ranging from your psychometrics, your gamified assessments, your simulations, your technical assessments, so on and so forth. And we have partnered up with these vendors and essentially have included them in our marketplace. So what that means is, within Talent Pulse, you already have access to all these different assessment tools that we have validated, that we have vetted through, that will serve you best in understanding your candidates, understanding your employees. So you do not need to go out there yourselves. We will be the ones that are guiding you in selecting the right type of assessments. So let me show you how that approach works. So I'm here creating an assessment. Our approach to recruiting and our approach to assessing internally is more or less the same. Let's just go an example for here. Let's say we're doing a recruitment. So having a closed marketplace approach, one of the things that it guarantees is a robustness and a fairness approach to it. So say, for example, you want to assess somebody at a middle manager level. What this means is, no matter whether you're doing a recruitment or whether you're doing an internal, it will always be the same assessment being used. I'll go into a little bit more detail about that, but you can see that the areas that we measure are 4 key areas: leadership, agility, cultural fit, and technical functional or skills. Leadership essentially means the expected leadership behavioral competencies from the organizations, right? So every organization will have their own leadership competencies, their own behavioral competencies. We want to be able to measure those competencies for you. We want to capture those competencies. Agility essentially measures how agile a person is. I'll go into more detail about this later on in the analysis part, but you want to know how agile a person is, right? You want to be able to see how quickly they can adapt to new ways of working or new ways of thinking, as well as how willing they are to adapt and change. So that's where the agility comes into play. Cultural fit, very, very important, something that is overlooked by quite a lot of organizations. But cultural fit essentially is you want to see how well aligned your talents are to the values of your organization, right? Very, very important to understand, very important to take a good insight to, because values of your organization is something that is driven throughout the entire organization, from your senior leadership team all the way down to your executive pool, entry level, graduate level, right? You want to ensure that the kind of people that you're having on board on your teams, you want to know how well aligned they are to the values that your company aspires. And this is something that we definitely capture and something we definitely want to measure. And skills tests, technical, functional, this is something a little bit more specific to individual roles, to individual departments. You want to see if they have the right skills. Now, before I just deep dive a little bit further into this, I just want to draw your attention to this triangle here. And this is elaborating a little bit further to what Sharma was sharing in terms of having a holistic insight, a holistic understanding of the employees, of the talents. You really want to know them inside and out. So we have this holistic trifactor approach. Your preferences, behavior in action, and context. Essentially, preferences measures the person's drivers, measures the person's motivations. You want to understand what makes them tick, what makes them want to perform, right? So what kind of environment do they naturally want to be in that will make them want to drive, makes them want to perform better work? What motivates them? Having an insight to their preferences allows you already a lot of ability to make the right decisions on what to do with the individual to certain projects or certain tasks, activities, because you want to know what makes them tick. Right? Now, most organizations would stop there, right? And this is where the psychometric assessments will come into play. A lot of organizations will just stop here. Where we take it the next step further is our behavior in action. Simply put, behavior in action validates the preferences. What does that mean? In a very simple example, Demiri, if I was to take the test, shows that I like working with numbers and I like working in teams. However, when you put me through the behavior in action, so this is where our business simulations can come into play, you're putting me in a real life situation, and the way I play the simulation will show whether I actually like working with numbers and whether I actually like working in teams. So if my preferences shows that Demiri likes working with numbers, Demiri likes working in teams. However, after the simulation, it may show that, okay, yeah, Demiri is great with numbers, however, not so much working with teams, something that we need to be aware of, right? So you want to be able to validate that. So in a more layman's term, I like to cook doesn't mean my cooking is good, right? Just because I like cooking doesn't mean my cooking will be good. You want to be able to validate that. Now, typically we introduce this for more, middle managers and above, because you want to have that robustness as you're climbing up the ladder. You want to ensure that you have the right people in place. And the final triangle is the context, right? Context. Essentially, this is where you have that face-to-face. You bring in the assessors, you bring in those interviewers. they will have the information from the preferences, from the behavior and action to really probe further, really understand the candidates, contextualize it to the organization, right? So with the three combined, it gives you a very, very deep insight to the candidates. So just very quickly going to this, I'll just open this up very quickly. So here you can see, under leadership, these are all the different types of assessments that are available to measure your leadership competency model, to measure your agility, to measure your cultural fit. Now, in a real life situation, of course, it won't be this many. And this is where we come in and we understand yourselves, understand your organization, exactly what is it you want to measure, understand your competencies. And with a simple click of a button, we can then select or deselect, in this case, which are the assessments that are not needed to measure your leadership. Okay? Very quickly, we can do that. Agility, same thing, right? So this is where the flexibility of our approach comes into play with our assessment approach, giving you the access to all the different type of assessments that we have, measuring exactly the kind of things that you need and want to measure. Okay, so this is our assessment approach, really understanding the candidate. Firstly, everything, just to share with you, all of our assessments are conducted online, meaning that the experience the candidate go through is everything online as well. And then also from an admin point of view, administering these assessments is also done online. So everything can be done virtual, everything can be done online. So what that essentially means is that the ability to send out the assessments, no longer would it be the traditional way where every time you want to do an assessment, it has to be a project, you have to go through certain processes. Our approach essentially means that you can send out the assessments 24/7, 365 days of the year, anytime that you want, right? And everything is automated. So from who do you send it out to, whether it's internal or external, your messaging to them can be automated, so emails and everything is already there. Now, very quickly about here, because everything is online, what this essentially means is that the report and the scores are immediately available the moment the candidate finishes his or her assessment, right? And our approach to the report is a consolidated report, meaning that no matter how many assessments you do, everything gets consolidated into one singular, easy to read report. Because as we know, as managers ourselves, if we have 4 or 5 different subordinates, each doing 3 or 4 different assessments, we don't have time to read 15, 20 different reports. I just want to read 5 reports on my 5 subordinates. Keep it simple, direct. All right. So that is our approach to assessments. I won't go into the nitty-gritty. Let me now share with you then our approach to understanding what does good look like. So this is where the jobs element come into play. So I'll go through this quickly. So on Talent Pulse, we have what we call our success profile library or job framework library. And essentially what this means is that we have 3,000 plus different jobs on our system. That is a good foundation. And that's the key word I use here. It's a good foundation to build what does good look like for all the different jobs. So a lot of our clients use this to redesign some of the roles they already have, but also to have a point of view as to what the kind of future roles do we need and how do we prepare for that. So let me give you an example here. So let's say, something a little bit more future centric. There's a role called digital security, right? So a lot of organizations are going through digitalization, but they don't have a full grasp of what that means. I don't have a full grasp of what the kind of jobs that are needed. So this is an example, right? Digital security officer. So let's just say we're focusing on this one. You have your job title, you have your job description or job purpose, and your typical job level ranging from a 1 to a level 6. 1 being your C-suite, 6 being your entry level. So you have a rough indication that this is a, somewhat senior executive type level. But let's just go into view details and understand this role more. So bearing in mind what I'm showing you now comes with every single job on our system, right? So yes, again, you have the job title, you have the job description, typically some data, which industry is in, what level it is at, and then what are the typical top 4 accountabilities associated with this role, right? So typically what are the top 4 roles associated with this role. But the main thing that a lot of clients use is are technical functional skill libraries. And so with every single role, you'll come with the recommended technical functional skills needed for this role. So you can see here, we have about 8 per page, and it's about 3 pages worth. How do I read this? You have the name of the competency. We measure it by proficiency. So proficiency meaning the expected level of behavior, ranging from a level 1, which is your basic, to a level 4, which is your expert level. And how important is it to have this competency for the role? Right. So let's just see which ones are the most important. Let's just go to that. So here we go. We can see these are the most important competencies. So this is what the system, Talent Pulse, is saying. If you're designing this role, these are the competencies you need to have. Let's understand those competencies a little bit better. So let's say, for example, cybersecurity risk management, right? Something very technical, something that seems quite feature-centric. I want to know what that means. So it's telling me that I need to have this competency. The person who's coming in needs to be at a level 3, and it's very important to have this competency. Let's see, what does it mean? I'll go to details. So here's the definition of the competency. So knowledge of tools, techniques, approaches, processes of cybersecurity risk management, etc., etc. Now at a level 3, so we're only looking at a level 3, these are the behaviors you expect somebody to have already shown or be able to show in order for them to be considered a level 3. So if I want to come in as a cybersecurity risk, I need to show that I'm a level 3. I need to show that I have the ability to develop practical guides for professionals. I need to show that I'm able to relate cyber risk assessment models to different business areas. I need to provide insights into cybersecurity risk management, so on and so forth. Right? So very, very detailed. And this is just a level 3. So of course, a level 1, 2, 4 will have different behavior proficiencies as well, and different descriptions matching that proficiency level. Then, other things like questions for probing. If you are looking for somebody or you want to just ensure that they are level 3, you just want to make sure it's there. These are the kind of questions that you can ask. Or if you're developing somebody to become a level 3, these are just kind of the tips that you have in order to increase the person to become a level 3. Right? So all good, great. However, you may then say, you know what? Yes, this is nice. However, it doesn't quite capture our organization. And that's exactly what we recognize. And it's something that we can definitely help a lot of our clients do, where you contextualize these roles to your organization. So that's why I said at the very beginning that this is a very strong foundation. You're using this as a foundation to build and create your own. So just very quickly, just 2 minutes, I'll show you how that looks like. You're able to then customize and contextualize the role to yourself. So this is the role that we looked at. So through here, you can customize the accountabilities that's needed for the role. So just delete some of these. So this is the role that we looked at just now. And you say, you know what? Yes, this makes sense. However, this is not needed. I don't want this. However, this is not needed. I don't want this. So then you're left with only 2. Then you can say, you know what? There's some elements that are missing which are not here. Maybe along the lines of cloud. So let's just go here, and essentially what I'm able to do is search any other role in the library that you can compare to and see how close it is to the role that you're looking at. So say, for example, now I just type cloud security. Let's choose this role. And now you're seeing this role and you go, actually, yes, you know what? This is something that we are actually looking for. You can add it in. This is something that we're looking for. You can add it in. The moment you delete and add in accountabilities, this role is now uniquely yours, right? So this is how you contextualize it. It's now uniquely yours to your own organization. And the same approach can be done for the skills as well, right? So you can look at the different skills, you can remove the skills that you don't want, you can add in the skills, search for other areas, add in the skills that you do want, so add in here, and here they are at the bottom, and you can choose the priority, you can choose the different proficiency levels, and you can see in greater detail in case you want to know what are the different proficiency levels expected, right? So this is how we recognize what good looks like. This is how we recognize the different roles in the organization. Okay, so what I've shared with you now are the 2 main data points that we use to make talent management decisions. So now the big question is, okay, great, so what? What happens next? What do I now do? So this is where the real robustness of Talent Pulse really comes in. This is where the real magic comes into play. And I'll show you, we do have a number of different dashboards, but I'll show you two key dashboards here when it comes to talent management decisions, when it comes to recognizing your talents. So when we look at talents and when we look at jobs, there's two different ways to look at it. You can look at it from a bottom-up approach, meaning I'm looking at a single talent, I'm looking at an individual, and I want to know what I can do with that individual. I want to know all the information about that individual. And then the other way around is a top-down approach, meaning that, okay, I now have a job in the organization that's going to be vacant, and I want to know who do I have in my company that can fill in that role, right? So those are the two different point of views that I want to share. Let me go into the first one, which is a bottom-up approach. So very quickly, this is our approach to an org structure. Your CEO is here, N-1, N-2. A full-fledged talent pulse with all the data in place. Very quickly, I can show you here. Click of a button, I can see where my mission critical positions. Click of a button, I can see where are my high potentials. Already, I can make some talent management decisions here, such as let's work on Jackie becoming the next CTO because he is a high potential and they can move into a mission critical position. Quickly here, click of a button, I can see where are my risk areas in the organization. This is something directly related to succession planning, where if it's a red, it means that nobody has been identified as a successor. So the CEO, even though the CEO has 7 to 8 subordinates, it's a risk because nobody has been recognized as a successor. Mid means only one person, low means 2 or more. So for example, if anything was to happen to Joseph, the CHRO, it's okay. We have identified successors that are ready to take on that position, right? But let's just look at a talent. So let's say I'm looking for somebody called Faralisa. I can search either by job title or by name. And let's just understand Faralisa a little bit better. So we have here our, the first page is our employee info. So just basic information about Faralisa. All the data that you want to capture about Faralisa can be captured here. And this is where data from multiple different HRMSs, different systems can all be captured here as well. So from her personal information, work experience, performance rating, etc., etc. Now we can see here Faralisa, she's the head risk management and advisory. Very quickly, this is the breakdown that I was sharing. We have the 4 different areas that we look at. So the leadership, technical, functional, agility, and cultural fit, right? And as I mentioned, these are the competencies that we capture. Now imagine Faralisa has done her assessment, and this is the role that she's been put into. I can now put those 2 data points together, and I can tell you Faralisa is now 76% fit for that role. So that is considered a good fit. I'll talk about these other ones in a while, but 76% considered a good fit. However, that means there are some gaps. What do those gaps mean? Let's just take a look. So let me just skip to here. I'll really open it up. So here we see the same 4 quadrants, but now with Faralisa's score to it. So let's just focus on leadership. So already here, these are the competencies of leadership. I can see that dealing with ambiguity. Okay, Faralisa, great. You're 88%, nice and high score. Inspire, motivating others. Okay, not too bad, 68%. However, where she's falling short, where her gaps are, is strategic thinking and business acumen, 27% and 47%. Right? So immediately, without even going and talking about development or opening up any other development platforms, I already know that if I want to improve Faralisa, if I want to develop and grow her in her leadership, no longer would it be a broad stroke approach to leadership. So, your typical leadership training workshops, your typical leadership programs. I can now really focus on exactly what is it that Faralisa needs in order to improve her leadership, right? And I know it's strategic thinking, and I know it's business acumen. Let me start working on that. So we look at it from 3 different lenses. From an HR point of view, what are the kind of programs, what are the kind of developments do I have that I can send Faralisa for to develop her strategic thinking, develop her business acumen? From a manager's point of view, so if I am her superior, what can I do to improve these 2 competencies? And especially if we have that 70-20-10 approach, where 70% is on-the-job training, what are the kind of projects can I assign her? What kind of activities or tasks can I give her where she needs to start using critical thinking, where she needs to start using business acumen in her day-to-day work, really working on that. And if I'm Faralisa herself, if I'm the employee, if I have this data and I know this about myself, the conversations I can now have with my HR, the conversations I can now have with my manager is extremely different, because now I know I can talk about critical thinking, I can talk about business acumen. Back to Sharma's point about enabling and giving that accountability back to the employees, giving them the control over their own development, over their own careers. I can now take control back of that. All right. So the same can be said in all the different quadrants. You can see where where the gaps are and where she needs to work on. Right. So very, very insightful. A lot of our clients end up using this to build those IDPs, and I'll show you what that looks like in a bit. But just going back then to this view here. So essentially what you've seen there just now is the ability of putting Faralisa scores against jobs. So essentially what that means is, technically, what Talent Pulse can do is take Faralisa's assessment scores and actually map it to any other job that you have on the system. So for example, if she's already been identified to move into the group head audit and risk, if you were to promote her today, she will only be, once it comes up, 71% fit for the role, right? And again, that's the call you have to make. Do we want to move her today? Or if we know there's another 2 years left, how can we increase her readiness level so that she becomes more ready to take on the group head audit? And again, you look at the view gaps to understand where the gaps are. Aspire goal is just a role that maybe she wants to be one day. So say, for example, CEO is a role that she wants to be one day. I'll talk about this in a little bit more about career pathing, but today, Faralisa, you're only 66% of the way there. A little bit more work to do to become the next CEO. Let's work together to build that development journey of yours to put you in a position where you could potentially become the next CEO. Now, my own personal favorite is actually recommended role. What this means is that the system will identify the top 3 roles in any other divisions that Faralisa could be good for. So say, for example, here, the group head of regulatory and government relations, completely different from where she is right now. But the system is recommending this for Faralisa because it turns out that she is 81% fit for this role. So not only is she a better fit for this role than her current role, but she's a better fit for this role than her succession role. So you can imagine, again, traditionally what would happen if this person was to retire, you would look for somebody within that division to fill in that role. And if there's nobody in that division, you then start looking outside, right? And we know how expensive, how tedious it is to go looking for talents outside. What this is telling you is saying, hey, FYI, you actually have somebody in the risk and management advisory division that's actually very good for this position. And this now completely opens up different conversations that you have within your organization. We're talking about talent mobility. We're talking about dynamic career pathing. We're talking about increasing your employee value proposition, because now you can tell people like Faralisa that your career within our organization is not just within one division climbing up. There's a potential for you to move across as well as up, improving your breadth as well as your depth. So it really allows you to maximize the kind of talents that you have, finding those hidden gems within here. An explore role essentially means any other role you just want to see whether she's fit for it or not. Right? So this is from Faralisa's point of view, looking at the talent, understanding what kind of journey can we build with her. Now, the other point of view, as I mentioned very quickly, was about the top down. So we have a vacant role and we want to see who's fit for that role. So this is where our talent target comes into play. So because we have all the roles in the organization, everybody has done the assessment. Let's say we're looking for the next head of regulatory compliance, for example, right? So this person is going to be leaving within the next year, the next 2 years, and we want to build a succession pool for this particular role. Sorry, let me choose this one. All right, so the head of risk and management advisory, this is the target. The dots are your people, right? And essentially what it means is the closer the dot is to the target, the better fit they are for the role based on the requirements that are needed. So say, for example, here, fit score, we want to see who's the highest fit. Drag it all the way up. Okay, so sorry, it's not working right now, but you should be able to drag it up and you'll see the dots moving around. But what can also happen is you can add other features or other filters to identify the candidates, because we know, fit score is not good enough. Maybe you want to say something like years of experience. You see, so the moment I add in years of experience, you can see the dots have now moved because it's now responding to what the requirements are for the role, right? So it's responding to this. And you can change the weightage. You may say, yeah, years of experience and fit score is important. However, maybe fit score is more important than years of experience. And again, that will reflect here. So this is essentially very important because you can filter and really think about all the conditions, all the requirements needed for the role. But let's say now, these are the people that I want to see who falls within this area. And I can see these are the top 10, top 15 candidates for the role. And essentially I can now go in. And bear in mind, this is just a demo, but I should now be able to go in and compare all my talents side by side. And I can see that based on the requirements, the highest fit person is somebody called Omar, 52%, followed by Ryan, followed by Alia, so on and so forth. Right? Really see the differences here. Now, the approach to this is very objective. So you've completely eliminated the biasness to identifying the next best talent, because it's purely following the data that's required, the data that's used to filter and identify the talents here. Now, of course, you could easily say, oh, why is Demiri not in here? You can simply add in Demiri and you'll see that, okay, maybe he's only 20% fit, right? So that will already give a good ability to challenge who the managers, who the seniors want to use as a successor. And again, you can compare in greater detail, once I click here, in greater detail, really seeing where do the talents stand out compared to each other, having that really in-depth conversation from one person to the next to eventually then add in as a successor or as a hyper. So I just want to finish off very quickly because Sharma did touch a little bit about career pathing. So the last thing I just want to share with you all is just a quick sneak peek into how we actually approach career pathing, and especially when it comes to following this talent target view, following the development point of view. So this is what career pathing can look like on Talent Pulse. So if you remember Faralisa, she aspires one day to become the CEO. We're able to build that journey with her to see what are the development requirements that she needs to have in order to become the next CEO, but also what are the jobs that she should potentially go into before she goes into that position she aspires to one day. So in this instance here, the path of least resistance, we call it, you can see that she needs to go in this role first for a few years before becoming CEO. Now, of course, we know it's not as easy as that. There are other different ways of achieving her career aspirations with different kind of roles that she needs to go into, different number of roles that she needs to go into, with the different kind of skills that she needs to also develop. Yeah. So this is our approach to career pathing. Obviously, we go into more details about development and so on and so forth. But I think I'll take a pause here after sharing you most of what we can do in Talent Pulse, and I think we'll move into the Q&As now. Okay.
Thank you so much, Damiri. Yeah, I guess that wraps up our session for today. There will be a lot more coming in, so stay tuned for that. We'll keep in touch with everyone. And of course, one of us, Shirlene, will keep in touch with us. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day.